This is Masechta Shabbos, Daf Lamed Vav. So we continue talking about what you can and what you cannot insulate pots with on Shabbos, and now we're going to talk about what insulation materials are a muksa. Rabbi Yechanan Bar Shila says like this: Hada Amra. This is in effect that Hada the Chama Adai, one who insulates materials, needs to remove a bit from the pot before he puts them in insulation. What is he worrying about? Dehu Ase Misav, because when he comes to place it, it will spill. And then it will be the heated food. So what's going to happen is you're going to spill some of the liquid onto the insulation. The insulation is going to get heated. It in turn will then heat the food. It's going to be heated insulation. That's not good. Because we learned a lot of the insulation has to be only when it's dry, not when it's moist. So be very careful when you put the pot in the insulation, it does not spill. So therefore, he suggests taking some of the material out of the pot so that it shouldn't be overflowing and shouldn't spill. Taman Tanina, we learned in the Mishnah. There's also when there's new gefes, which we learned was dried out material, organic material that was turned into charcoal. So when it's new, then it can be Mekabel Tumah. Aval B'shina Tahar, but when it's old, it's not Mekabel Tumah, it is Tahar. The Einzu Hi Chadasha, the Einzu Hi Shana. Which one is the one that's new? Which one is old? Rabbi Yosef Barabun, B'Shem Rabbi Yechanan, he says Chadasha B'Soich Shnayim Asher Chodesh. If it's less than a year old, and Yishana La'achar Shnayim Asher Chodesh. If it's more than a year old, then it's no longer Mekabel Tumah. Taimnin, Bichsos, Ubefeirais, Ubeanfe Yaina. So we may insulate with clothing, with produce, and with dove feathers. Rabbi Yuda Bar Pazi B'Shem Rabbi Yirmiyah Bar Chanina. He says, like we said the Gemara yesterday, Hada the Tamar B'Shalai Rava Rikuv Vasin. That so long as the decomposed material does not outnumber or outweigh or outmatch, I guess, there's less of it than the non-decomposed material, because decomposed material, that we could say produces heat, whereas the non-decomposed material does not. And you're not allowed to insulate in a mix where the mix that is majority is the one that produces heat. Aval Ravas Rekuvuvusan, then Asr Litmoin Bahem. Then it's Asr to insulate with them. Ubenoires shall pishtan, ubesoires shall corrosion. When you have flax of combings and you have the carpenter's sawdust, so then it has to be coarse. It shouldn't be fine. So anantaninon noiseres. We learned in the Mishnah regarding the sawdust. Tanya debei Rab Noiseres. The Academy of Rebbe taught about combings. Now, Hada Amra, this says, in other words, that he Hada. This case of flax combings is like the case of the sawdust and vice versa. So the Tanakama would allow you to do both the fine and the coarse, and Rabbi Yehuda would say only the coarse. Halacha Beis. Taimnin bishlachin, if one may insulate with hides, umetaltalin aisan, and one may move them also. In other words, not if they're insulated, but you can move hides on Shabbos. Then I'm muksa. I'm going to say, what are we talking about? All hides or only specific hides? Begizei tzemer ve'ei metaltalin aisan, and with wood sharings, but we cannot move the wood sharings. Even when you take the pot out of the wood sharings, you can't move them, it's muksa. Ketzeraisen, so what should a person do? So noitel ad aksos ve'ei noiflais. He removes the garment and the sharings will fall off. So they are mixed up with garments, and the garments obviously are not muksa. So you're going to move the garments, and that's going to make everything fall off, and it's incidental. Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah says, Kupa mata ad sida v'noitel. He tilts the entire box on the side and then he removes the pot. Again, make sure you do not spill it, because if you spill it, then it's moist, then you're creating a problem. Shema yital v'ena yachol lahachzar. So unless you remove the pot and be able to replace it. So no, you can remove it and you can replace it because it's incidental. So we learned before that you can't insulate on Shabbos. And the reason why you can't insulate Shabbos is one of two reasons. Number one is either because you're going to not cook the thing fully before Shabbos, or because you're going to miss the lectures. However, so how could you possibly return the pot to insulation? So this must be talking about later. Either it's after the lecture or it's after the food has been already cooked. It was insulated before Shabbos. On Shabbos, you take it out, and once you take it out of insulation, you're not insulating renew. You're only returning it to insulation. So therefore, those takanas do not apply. Taimnin, Bishlachin, Watatlin, Isan. One may insulate with an animal hide and one move them. You can move animal hides on Shabbos. Rabbi Yudah ben Pazi b'Shem Rabbi Yonasan, Hada Detane, Benasunin, Eitzel, Baal Habayis. This is talking about hides that you use in your house. Avo Benasunin, Be'apoisiki, Lubda. But ones in a warehouse you cannot do. Or anyone that's going to be for a craft. Anything from a craftsman that's been worked on, that's going to be sold, that's important, those are muksa. But ones that you already have in your house and you use, and now it's a household item, so then that is fine. Big Zayt Samer, son. We said that wool sharings, but we cannot move them. So Rabbi Yudah and Rabbi Yechon was talking about Hadad, because obviously we're talking about high quality ones or ones that were used for set aside typically for a muksa purpose. But sharings that are kept in possession of the householder, so then it's fine. So obviously it's kept in the case of a householder because it's being used for insulation. And we already said in the Mishnah that not only should not be moved, but then it's a problem with moving the pot because you're using it for insulation. So what it means is if you're using it, the regular household item ones for the insulation, then you could take the pot out. There's no problem. But if you're using the fine ones, let's say it's coming before Shabbos, he's a craftsman, and he has a new one, or he has one that he wants to sell, or it's a craftsman who's working on something, he doesn't really want it to get ruined. So what he does is, but he figures it's a dry pot, he could use it as insulation. So that is muksa. You could use it for insulation, but now your problem is moving the pot. However, if you use a type, it's a regular household item for insulation, then you have no problem taking the pot out and removing it. Rav Yirmiyah b'Shem Rav. Rav Yirmiyah, the name of Rav, says, Porshin machzeles al gabe shefos shel levenim b'Shabbos. One may spread a mat on Shabbos over a row of bricks that are muksa. You want to protect them from the sun, or protect them from the rain, or from other elements. Amr Rab Shimon Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Shimon Yanai says, Ani loy shamati ba'abba. I did not hear this from father, my Abba. Achoisi Amra li mishmai. But my sister told me in Abba's name that Beitza Chanel does Yamtif, an egg that was laid on Yamtif, now it's Noilad, it's Muksa. Soimchin la kli bishvil shalai tizkalel. One may place a vessel next to it so that it should not roll. In other words, if it's new, you can put it next to it so it doesn't roll out of the house and get lost or get damaged. Aval ein kaifin aleh esakli, but one may not invert a kli over it to protect it from being broken or otherwise. So therefore, it shows that you're allowed to put something over. You're allowed to put something to protect it from stop from moving, but you can't put something on top of it that would make it move or touch it. So kaifin aleh. So Shmuel kaifin aleh kli. One may invert a kli over it. Shmuel says no, you could actually put a kli over it and. When it says, it's provided the vessel does not touch the beitza. So he sees, so therefore Shmuel can learn, since the kli is not touching the beitza, therefore putting it over the beitza is not doing anything. First of all, it's not a bosses, because it's not underneath, it's on top, it's protecting it, but it's not touching it. If it's not touching muksa, muksa is allowed to just be there. You're allowed to protect muksa. It's different when you're putting a sheet onto bricks. So at that point, you're not moving the bricks. The bricks are very heavy, you're not going to move. So maybe then you could put the sheet on because it's not going to move. But according to Shmuel, that's according to Shmuel. Shmuel says you don't move it. According to the previous shita, even though it's not moving, you still can't put it on. Tani Rav Haishir. Rav Haishir told in the Brisa, Nichil shall divirin person alas hadin. One may spread a sheet over a swarm of bees. And b'cham ifnei chama for because of the sun, and b'sham ifnei gshamim, and the rain because of the rain. And obviously you're touching the bees, and obviously you're going to move the bees, and bees are muksa, but you'd like to do it to protect them. Mak Rav Shmuel. Which one is it? Is it like Rav or Shmuel? So we say, Kan Mamaila, here by the case of the bees, it's on top. And Reb Shimon ben Yanai will say, you allowed to put it on top or next to it to protect the bees. And Kan Mamata, here in case of the egg, you're putting it underneath it. And in that case, then you're not allowed to put it underneath it because Reb Shimon ben Yanai prohibits it. So therefore the Brisa go even according to him, if you say, depending on where the sheet is going on. or where the bowl protection is being put. Rabinsa b'shem Rabbeisi Bar Chanina. Rabinsa says in the name of Rabbi Chanina, Chape loistois asur al taltalin, that coverings for cargo ships do not be moved on Shabbos, and also so too the sheets that painters bring and they spread out to protect the floors, and workers also, those things cannot be moved on Shabbos. Mitzdosa having Pearson, the traps that were spread out. So having Mish Tarfon Goy Shmima, and they were become scorched in the sun. Asa and Rishol Rav, their owners came in and required of Rav, Mamataltalan, what is it regarding moving them? Amarline, he said to them, so that it's usher. So chashvun alehen masnin tvufin roshechen, intend to lay on them like beds, and then and then it would be permissible for you to move them, because now once you use them for medicinal purpose, then you can move them again. So right now you can't move them, but if you use them as if their support for you and their beds is now multi-purpose, and then you can move them. Rabbi Zeira b'shem Rabbi Yirmiyah, Roshei Kolosai Shikish Alehem Mes Ma'ol, that the tops of beams that were intended the day before Mutal Tatlin, so those you could sit on because you were intended before, therefore they're not muksa, and therefore on Shabbos you're allowed to use them. Rabbi Yaina, Rabbi Yosi, Salka, the Sudra, Dvarula, that the Have Rano Taman, that when there was a session of scholars, Vahave Taman Roshei Ksovlois, and there were tops of beams there, Iso Visholan, they came to ask Barula Mamatatlin if you allowed to move them. Amarlani said to them, Im Kishaktem Alehem Etmoil, if yesterday already you had in mind they're going to use them Mutatatlin, Vimlav, not Ein Atem Mutatatlin, then it's for them, you can't move them. Tani Rav Chalafta Bar Shol, Rav Chalafta Bar Shol says in the Brisa, Moichin Shechoshev Alein Me'etmal, flockings that were intended from the day before, so Mutal Taltan, then you can move. So Tani Rab Yesi Bar Shol, Rabbi Yisrael Bar Shol says, Sever Shel Kairos, Shechishev Aleihem Me'etmal, piles of beams that were intended before, Mutal Taltan, you can move them. As long as you intended for them before, you designate them for non-muksa purposes, now you can move them. Rabbi Yosi, Rachanina, B'Shem, Rabbi Yishma, Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Yaakov, Baracha, Rabbi Yaakov, Baridi, Rabbi Chanina, B'Shem, Shmuel, Rabbi Yosi, Abba, Sholcha, his father was a tanner, V'Have Amar Lanu, and he would say to us, Kashu Lachem Roshei Gizos, tie for yourselves the tips of the hides, branches, the ones that hold up the hides before Shabbos. The Atamatur Taltam Lumach, and therefore they can move them the next day. Chizki Amar Chizki says, Afilu Malam, even if he rubbed the tips, he just touched them, and that was his designation. So then it's mutter to move them because he had a mutter designation them before Shabbos. Things that technically otherwise would be looked on Shabbos, if it's not a malacha in and of itself, if you designate it for a good use or proper use on Shabbos, then that makes it mutter on Shabbos. Rav says, Chariyais Shagidan Lashchichva, so branches of a date palm that when harvested for reclining, Einon Strichon Kishor does not require tying to designate them to be used, Lahailin, but if they're used for roofing, Strichon Kishor, you have to tie them to designate them properly to use on Shabbos. Rav Barchan says, Bein Chshiva, Bein Lahailin, Strichon Kishor, both, if they're used for reclining or used for roofing, they require tying to designate them as a proper use for Shabbos. Amr of Chizkiah says, the law Dami Kishure the Rav Bahayolin, the Kishure, the Rav Abba Bar Chana Bekalim. Rav's tying requirements for branches that were harvested for roofing is not the same as Rav Abba Bar Chana's tying for utensil purposes. Because Kishure is Rav Bahayolin. Rav's tying requirements for branches used for harvest for roofing is not satisfied ad Shayikshar Es Kol Kotzaitzin until one ties all the thorns in the branches. And then it's finally designated to be used properly on Shabbos. And Kishurei, the Rav Abba Bar Chana B'Kelim, and Rav Abba Bar Chana's tying for utensils is satisfied ad Shiyaleim Tayar Kli. Once the branches have formed the functional utensil and now can be used for something on Shabbos, that designated enough for Shabbos, and now it's mutter and no longer muksa.